Hi all. By now you should be finished with your primary source analysis and be ready to move on to the next stage of the analytical research project. You should have identified a particular social or rhetorical issue that you wish to use your primary source to explore. In order to learn more about that rhetorical or social issue, we're asking you to put together an annotated bibliography. And so I thought it would be useful to look at a sample of the annotated bibliography with you and talk about exactly what you need to do within this assignment. So up on the screen in front of you, you should see a sample annotated bibliography. It's the annotated bibliography that goes with the PSA on John Frieda's Fries theorem. The PSA you should be familiar with from the Learning WEX cycle. So this is the annotated bibliography that goes with that PSA. To give you an overview of it, you can see that Carly, the person who's written this annotated bibliography, has found 3 sources. All 3 of these sources help her to get at the rhetorical issue she's interested in exploring, which is basically individualism in advertising. So if you look at the sample, you'll notice that 2 of the sources, the first and the second, come from research databases. They're academic articles. The third source, though, is an academic book. So Carly has actually made the decision to use 3 credible peer-reviewed sources. And certainly that's a decision you're welcome to make as well. You only are required to use 1 credible peer-reviewed source. So for your other sources, you can look at web pages, see what other options you have available to you. So let's get into breaking down the annotated bibliography now, and just really look at this first entry. So as you should notice, each entry within the annotated bibliography is made up of 2 parts. First of all, you have the citation, which is what we'll be learning about how to put together today. And then after it, you have the annotation. So the citation is simply a reference that gives you information about the source, that tells you everything you need to know to track down the source, that allows your reader to figure out where your source came from. The annotation is a little more complicated. Now, essentially, you'll find that your annotations need to do 2 things for you. First of all, they need to provide a summary of the source. So they need to basically give an overview of the main points of the source, the most important information that you found in it. Later this week, we're going to be working on writing summaries. So if it's not something you're incredibly comfortable with yet, don't worry about it. We'll be working on it. Second of all, the annotation also contains an evaluation. And you'll find that you need to include 2 things within that evaluation. First of all, you'll need to talk about how you plan on using this source in your own work. So are you going to use it for background information? Are you going to use it to help build your arguments? Or are you going to set it up as kind of a counter argument that you can develop your points against? In this particular case, if you look at the final sentence of Carly's entry, you'll see how she plans to use it. She says that it's relevant to her argument because it helps explain why American adverts focus on individuality and nonconformity. So she's using it to build her own arguments, to bring in some extra points that she might make in the course of her SSI. In addition, your evaluation also needs to think about any potential problems that might exist with your source. So for instance, is your source out of date? Is it not written by an expert? Does it have some inaccurate information? Is it written with a particular bias? It's really important to bear those problems in mind because they're going to affect how you'll use the source. You don't want to call on an unreliable source as an expert witness. You don't want to use it to back up your ideas. However, you might want to use it to illustrate the public perception. You might want to use it as something you can argue against. So you can use an unreliable source. We'll talk about how later. At the moment, it's just important for you to be able to tell whether a source is reliable or not. And you'll need to use the techniques in evaluation that we developed last week. So, to sum up then, what you need to have in your annotated bibliography. For each entry, you need to make sure that you have a citation. You need to make sure that you have an annotation. That annotation will include a summary and an evaluation. And your evaluation will include a discussion of how you're going to use it and an examination of any potential problems. So please let me know if you have any questions. I hope this overview was helpful, and I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye.